for joining us tonight. We've got a great program tonight. Carrie Talasco is renowned in her training and so forth on all kinds of issues. She is a free market public policy and coalition management expert. As such, Carrie serves as the Director of Communications and Development, as well as serving as the Senior Election Integrity Fellow for the Virginia Institute for Public Policy. She also serves as Senior Fellow for Frontiers of Freedom and Institute for Liberty and Senior Advisor to the Florida Fair Elections Coalition. Carrie served 2 terms as a congressionally appointed commissioner on the Congressional U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission and was nominated to serve on President George W. Bush's commission to strengthen Social Security. Known for her dedication to presenting public policy in a way that will pass the dinner table test, quote unquote, Carrie brings a sharp wit and a practical spin to the free market solutions, public policy problems, and in developing stakeholder relationships. She joined the Virginia Institute for Public Policy team in 2022. And as you all know, the Virginia Institute for Public Policy is a partner with us, with the Middle Resolution Policy Foundation here at the Virginia Education Opportunity Alliance. This evening, we're going to, Carrie's going to share with us how best ways to do certain things and basically communicate. One is how to write an effective letter to the editor. Another is, how do you use social media to get your message out properly? And then the most important in my mind is how do you properly engage and effectively engage with your local policymakers, local leaders in your community. Our goal here is to have everyone become influencers on the issue of education choice within their communities. And that's why we're providing this training today. So Carrie, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Thanks so much, Craig. I appreciate it. All right, so I'm going to share a screen here in a minute with a PowerPoint on it. Before I do, I just want to say thank you for the invite. I am new to Florida. If anyone heard just a minute ago, I live in Florida, but I was in Virginia for 20 years and I loved it. We lived in Great Falls. My kid went to Langley. Just love Virginia. So my heart's still there a little bit, I have to say. So it is just an absolute delight to be with all of you. So I'm going to launch into a PowerPoint. 2 things. 1, I talk really fast. 2, don't panic because I talk really fast. At the end of the presentation, I will save the PowerPoint as a PDF. I'll drop it into the chat for you, and I'll also make sure that Craig and Lindsay have it as well to send to you. So if there's information that you're not getting while you're note taking or whatever, not to worry, I will give that to you. Oh, and the third of the 2 things is I cannot see the chat when I'm doing a presentation. So if you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, but try to remember them too, so that when we get to the Q&A part, because I will not see them. So, all right, with that, friends, we're going to go to share screen. All right, everybody good? Everybody sees? Okay, so that was a lovely introduction, Craig. Appreciate it very much. So I do, as Craig mentioned, I have a lot of hats. A lot of them have, they're on different parts of my head at any given moment. And I'm very pleased to be with Virginia Institute for Public Policy. I've done public policy and media for almost 30 years now inside the conservative movement. Right now, for the last 2.5 years or so, I've really been focused on election integrity. But I will tell you that I have done educational policy for years as well. Our friend, Virginia Walden Ford, who I hope some of you will see soon, was a dear friend, worked with her on DC school choice. So again, not only from Virginia, but really have a heart for what all of you do. So the most important thing really on this screen is my email, my Election Integrity Network email. I'll pop it at the bottom of the presentation as well. Please, if you have any questions about anything ever, please do not hesitate to, to contact me on this issue. So Craig had contacted me a couple of months ago and asked me to do, I do a lot of training.
I killed mine. Okay.
I do a lot of training for Election Integrity Network, and once a month I do a media training. As I said, I've done media, radio, I write op-eds, I've done that stuff forever. So my goal is to take what I know and what I've learned, sometimes the hard way by making really goofy mistakes, and sharing that with you as you're trying to increase the opportunities for parents and kids in Virginia. So thank you very much for all you do. I will say also, I have examples as we go through the PowerPoint. They're election integrity examples because that's what I do in my day job. So when you look at them, I want you to remember, and I will remind you, these are examples having to do with the bubble that I'm in right now, but in your education bubble, there's lots you can do as well. Okay, so these are what I call the 8 lanes of messaging and media outreach. As you can see, we also do work on radio, podcast, writing op-eds, public speaking, TV interviews, and press releases and media advisories. After talking to Craig, we very wisely decided to really stick to 2 topics tonight, which is social media and letters to the editor, because honestly, out of this whole list of 8 things, those are the things most easily accomplished. And if you're trying to break into media and trying to break into getting your message out there, those are the 2 best ways to do it. So why? Most people get their news nowadays from either social media or radio and news websites and podcasts. So social media is huge. News websites are huge. And that's where your letters to the editor go. So your social media, we'll talk about all the things you can post on your social media and how you can really make that work for you. And also on your news websites, whether you're starting local or you're starting statewide and what you're doing. Back when I started writing letters to the editor and op-eds, I was faxing things into people. We don't do that anymore, but they're still the best outlets for that. So the long answer, the short answer to where everybody gets their news is everywhere. Everybody gets their news everywhere. I don't think there's probably one person who gets it from one place. So you want to make sure as you're thinking about your media approach that you hit all the targets. And you hit them with one thing all at the same time. Don't make extra work for yourself. And we'll talk about how that works. So let me just get my face out of the way here. Give me 1 second. Okay. So rule number 1, we have messaging constants that work for no matter what kind of media or messaging you're doing. Of all of these, number 1 is the most important. Assume that absolutely nobody has any idea what you're talking about. So whether you're doing a letter to the editor or you're doing something, sharing on social media, make sure you explain what you're saying, not just how you feel about it. So one of the things we do, for example, in election integrity universes, we talk about a very bad thing called ranked choice voting. So I tell people all the time, don't say RCV. Right? So make sure if you're talking about education policy, you identify someone if you're trying to identify somebody in the Virginia administration, say that the Secretary of Education, blah, blah, blah. Never assume anybody knows who the Secretary of Education is. No, never assume that anybody understands what parental choice is. So start from a position that you don't know anything and they don't know anything. And that is where you're going to start. Because if you're putting a message out to the public, and you're talking in very specific terms, you're going to lose half the people before they even read the whole thing because they don't know what you're talking about. So always open with something that explains exactly what you're talking about. Create a list of major points you want to make and stick to it. So we all want to do everything. There's probably 3 things in your life as far as education choice goes that you that you should be focusing on. Don't do 10 things at once, just do 3 and make the points you want to make, and also create a list of things you should not say and never say any of them. I can't tell you specifically what those are, but one of them is always calling someone names. Like we get very upset sometimes with legislative leaders or local pundits or whatever. Never make it personal. So that should always be on your list of things that you do not want to say. You can say that they did something bad or they did something good, but you don't ever want to get personal. It shuts everything off. Make sure everyone in your group is on the same page. I have been in meetings before, coalition meetings where somebody shouts out something and everyone just forehead slaps like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they just said that. So it's very important if you're out there doing any kind of social media in particular, because you might have multiple people doing social media with you, that you make sure that you've got your own talking points set and that you've all agreed on them in your group, you've agreed on them, but you're not going outside that for whatever particular moment in time where you are sitting. Do your homework first always. particularly if you're doing any kind of social media, letters to the editor, or legislative. I like to tell people, bring paper. You guys have research on research about parental choice, about education, about school boards, about all that stuff. Bring that with you. And if you're doing any kind of media or any kind of legislative out, always bring your homework with you. Literally in your hand on a piece of paper is really the best way to do. But make sure, especially if you're trying to make a point in social media, or a point in your letter to the editor, or a point to your legislator, that you can back it up. We all know that some things are true, but when you're in an audience that needs data, you need to be the one to bring the data with. So even if you think something is self-evident, don't assume. Go back to number one here. Assume nobody has any idea what you're talking about. Bring the data with you. If you're doing any kind of social media or legislative outreach, it's perfectly okay to say, you know what? I don't know. That's a really good question. Let me get back to you. I've been in many meetings where I could see people desperately trying to make stuff up. It doesn't help. It's way better to just admit that you don't know, and you will get back to the person. This is sort of a common mistake, especially when you're kind of on the spot. You don't ever want to do that in any kind of public forum or with a legislator. Again, never say anything you can't back up. Make sure you have your materials with you, and leave unpleasant comments about anyone particular locked in Pandora's box. It's a surefire way to not get something published or to get blacklisted if you say something personally unpleasant. So even if you're feeling it, just don't be saying it. All right. So Willie Sutton famously, when asked, "Why do you rob banks?" said, "That's where the money is." So he is our social media inspiration, as is Deion Sanders, who once played football and baseball all at the same time. So what does that get to do with anything? The bottom line is you want to always follow those two precepts with social media. One, you go where the people are. They're the money in this case. And two, you do everything like Deion Sanders. You multitask at all time. So these are some of the numbers that relate to social media. You can see that Twitter, or I guess I'm supposed to change this to X now, it sounds silly to say, has almost 400 million users. That's a lot of people. Facebook has 3 billion, I think, worldwide, but somewhere between 175 and 2 million users in the US. Now, I will tell you that on my Facebook page, I am completely shadow banned. I can't even post a Christian music video, and they'll put it up there for me. Anything in a video, I am shadow banned. So I don't like Facebook. But at the same time, I recognize that that's, like Willie Sutton said about the money, that's where the people are. So those two places are really important. Instagram is okay. Most people don't use it for politics unless you're Seb Gorka. Most people use it for, their grandchildren and their dog, which is fine, but it's still okay to use. And then Rumble, Getter, and Truth Social, again, are wonderful sites. You shouldn't forget about them, but do remember where most of the money is, and most of the money is in Twitter and Facebook. So I'm saying this, and I'm telling you, get yourself a Twitter or a Facebook page. They're not hard. It takes about 10 minutes to set up either. If you have a local group, if you are just you and you care about education choice, the way to get your message out is through social media. Don't be timid about starting a Twitter or a Facebook or whatever social media account you want to have. You really want to use that like crazy. All right. So and I'm going to have visual examples of this, so don't panic if you're not following. When you're doing social media, you have two things going for you. One is original content and one is not original content. The good thing about not original content, which means you didn't write it or invent it, is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel to post on social media and have impact. So under number one, we have original content, which means personal commentaries, memes, comments on other posters' posts, and I'm going to give you examples of how that works. Stuff that you've written, stuff that's come out of your head or your organization or your group or whatever it is. The not original content is number two. You're tracking stories. I have election integrity here, but you're tracking stories about education policy in Virginia, about school boards, about all kinds of stuff, whether it's the Taylor Cross lawsuit, whatever it is. You need to have someone tracking the stories. And when you're on your social media, you want to post it. You can post them with your comment, or you can just repost a story from somewhere else. That is the not original content where you do not have to reinvent the wheel. Ideally, you want to have a little bit of both, because the reason that you're posting other people's articles is because the more you post, the more you're seen, and the more people see you, and the more people start following you. So you want to make sure you're every day, every morning, honestly, every morning I have 3 Twitter sites that I do for work. And I go pretty much every morning and post something I find somewhere. And again, it's just keeping it live and keeping it noticed. Find your friends. This is what you want to do on Facebook and Twitter. You go find people you know and bring them into the fold, and other people will find you as well. So remember the @ and the hashtag and the tag is your friend. So when you do a post, if you just post something, let's say an article about Loudoun County School Board, and you don't @ anybody, you don't include anybody in that post, it kind of doesn't go anywhere. So there's all kinds of people you can attract to a post, whether it's your Facebook page or whether it's Twitter, which is a lot easier to do, whether it's the governor, whether it's another organization, whether it's a school board, whether it's a legislator. You need to draw those people directly in to your post, and that's how you do it with the @. Now the hashtag is a little different. So the hashtag, say you want school, I don't know, school choice for parents in Virginia. That's a hashtag. You get everybody in your group using the same hashtag. It does what's called trending, and people will start noticing you. And also, if you're on Facebook, you want to tag people. Say you had a meeting and you post a picture on your Facebook page. Tag everybody you can possibly think of in the picture, even if they're not in it. Even if it's the governor, even if it's a legislator, you want to know about what you're doing. Even if it's a friendly media person, you want them to know what you're doing. So the purpose of social media is not just the post, it's using the post to amplify what you're doing. It is really fun to argue with the other team on Twitter. I love doing it. Sometimes when I'm really stressed out, I get on there and get into an argument with some other Twitterer, and it's very therapeutic for me, but it actually really helps. And the reason, and again, I'm going to show you examples of all this stuff. The reason it matters is because you're drawing more people into your universe by doing that. So if there's, I don't know, a teachers union in Virginia that says something absolutely ridiculous, it is okay to go on there and say, hey, teachers union, you know what? You're absolutely wrong on this, and then explain why. Fresh is the key. If you are going to be posting articles, don't let them be a week old. Like it's a sort of the 24 hours and you're dead kind of theory. You want to get things up there, and don't fear being spicy or sassy. You don't be rude or mean or anything. Not that I think any of you would be, but it's okay to put the sassy, spicy stuff up there, the sarcastic comments. That's what gets the attention. And again, while you're at it, don't forget your legislators of both parties. If you've got a legislator that is either opposing something that you are in favor of or supporting something that you're in favor of, do not fear dragging them into your social media post. And also, we're going to talk a little bit more about original versus reactive. And that's what I was saying. You have your original comment up there. Reactive is where you're arguing with somebody else about something that they've said. So here's some examples. And again, please, I apologize, but this is from the election universe, but it is merely by way of example. So these are 2 posts that I made on various times. And you can see, I'm talking here about this thing called ranked choice voting and why it's terrible. So commentary, it fails everywhere it's tried. There's a problem in Montana. So we were trying to target Montana. So you can see I've got the Montana legislature, I've got the Montana Democrats, I've got the Montana GOP, I've got 2 other organizations, Stop RCV and Save Our States, that work with us. So that is what I'm talking about when I'm saying @ing people. Every one of those people gets notification of the tweet, and everyone who's following them sees the tweet in their feed. So that's why if you're doing, and the second one is, you can see the February 24th one, same deal. tagging Cleta, who is our founder at EIN, Virginia Public Policy, myself, because I retweet things, and the Idaho legislature. These things really matter. It really, really helps you a lot to do those ats. And again, it amplifies your message, and you'd be amazed at how many notifications you get because someone, say this one, saw it on Cleta's Twitter, and Cleta has 1 million Twitter followers, and everybody starts retweeting it because it's on Cleta's, not just on your own. So it's really one to get two points. One, to get the attention of the people that you are atting, and also to get the attention of other people who are following them. So here you can see that's the original content. This is sort of the argumentative side. And honestly, it's extremely helpful. So these are two organizations who oppose what we were standing for. And you have many people like that in Virginia on school choice who oppose school choice. They say dumb things. And so the fun part is to retweet their tweet and make a comment on it. So you can see here both of these sort of making fun of them. The one on the right, they're all offering alcohol if you'll come and sign their petition to ruin Arizona voting. So you can have fun with these. And again, it's the same principle, even though instead of now doing an original tweet, you're doing sort of an argumentative tweet. That's perfectly okay. You're still wanting to at people to create more attention to what you're saying. All right. So the meme is your friend. There is a statistic, I looked for it today and I couldn't find it, but it was something like memes are 273 times more likely to be retweeted on Twitter than just language. So I am not good at this stuff. I go on Canva and I do the simplest job that I can possibly do on a meme. So I'm telling you this for two reasons. One is you should be doing memes, and they don't have to be fancy, but if you really want something retweeted, go ahead and do a meme. And number two is I call them opportunity memes. So this one you can see was for Memorial Day, and we made a tie between Memorial Day and election integrity. You can do that as well in education policy. We have National Daughters Day. We have National Sons Day. We have Grandparents Day. We have the National Day of Prayer. I can't think of anything else we should pray for more heartily than parents being able to control the decisions of their own children. You have the 4th of July. Oh my gosh, we're independent. Why can we not make our own independent choices? You have Thanksgiving. Thank you, God and America, for allowing us to have school choice. So think of the holidays and come up with these little memes, and they'll go all over the place. I guarantee it. You'll actually, if you start doing this, you'll be surprised at how easy it becomes. The first time I did a meme, I was practically crying. I didn't know what I was doing, but now I can kind of do it in my sleep. It's not that hard. Canva is very easy. There are other software packages out there, and Canva has some things that are free, so you don't even have to pay for. This is a meme that we're running right now. About voting, and I hope all of you have already voted. So when you show up to the polls, nobody says you voted already. So this is another one we're running. So for us, the marketing excuse, the meme excuse is that Virginia is having a voting season. You're in voting season. So again, you're looking for reasons. If there's a legislative thing that goes through that you like, there's a reason for a meme. If you're pushing a piece of legislation, there's a reason for a meme. If you have some cute little kid on school choice week who's wearing the little scarf that says school choice, stick them in a meme. There's all kinds of creative things you can do. And again, it really helps you amplify your message. All right, so let's shift gears. We will move away from social media and we will move into letters to the editor. Tip O'Neill famously said all politics is local. It's absolutely true. And this is what you have to think about when you're doing a letter to the editor. And there are two kinds of letters to the editor. One is initiative and one is reactive. So initiative is you write the first volley. In Virginia, we need to pass education scholarships. Here's why, blah, 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 blah. And you do your letter. The reactive one is somebody has posted a letter to the editor already, or a news article in your local paper or online somewhere, wherever it is, and you either like it or you don't like it. And you write a letter to the editor, either online or in your local paper, that says, you know, so-and-so from the teachers union said that school choice is bad. Here's why they're wrong. So either of those is fine. You have to kind of keep your eye on the media a little bit to get into a reactive one, but they're both very helpful. Most newspapers, even the big ones, still accept letters to the editor. Check your newspapers for requirements. If you don't see it online, just pick up the phone and call them and ask. They will usually be 150 to 200 words. Some of them only want 100, some go to 250, but 150 to 200 is it. So you want to hit hard out of the gate. This isn't an editorial where you've got 800 words to say your piece. You got to be sharp, sassy, and quick to make sure everybody knows what you're talking about in this letter to the editor. Include red meat. Well, what red meat means is what we talked about a minute ago, which is some data, if you have it, data to back up what you're saying, or you know, a report that backs up what you're saying, or a poll, or whatever materials you want to, because everything goes electronically right now. You can put that in as a hyperlink. Linking back to something Heritage Foundation did on education or whatever it is. Remember, it's a letter, not a rant. If you rant, it'll go in their trash can. It'll never see the light of day. You want to actually offer a solution as well, especially for a reactive one. If you're saying, well, the teachers union is wrong about this, you have to explain what the alternative idea is. That is your job when you're doing a letter to the editor. All right, so don't let it stop when you send it out the door. It may or may not be published. If it is published or is not published, you still want to post it on your social media. You want to put it, if you've got a website, or you can just do the big picture of it on your social media. You want to send a copy to your local legislator if it is applicable. If you're talking about a piece of legislation or policy, just print it off with a cover letter. You can either do that by regular snail mail, or you can do it by email. You know, I sent a letter to blah, blah, blah newspaper talking about XYZ, and here's a copy of it. Do I use my name or organization? Yes. If you have an organization, it's better to use an attribution. Sometimes the more local newspaper people would rather you just be a person. So the best thing for you to do before you write a letter to the editor, just have a look at the old ones from previous, see if people have attributions in there. I'm not going to tell you that you to use a VEOA attribution. That would have to come from Craig. I'm not saying that you should do that. But if you do have something behind, you know, get permission. If you do have something behind you, sometimes it's better to use that. Always include an ask. So at the very bottom, you have an ask. We hope this passes in Virginia. If you're a Virginia citizen, we hope you'll call your legislator. Sometimes it's a more subtle ask, like, we must do this for our children. We must do this for our parents. So make sure it doesn't just kind of end in the sky, that somebody reading your letter to the editor says, oh, I must do this now. So that's a very, very important factor. All right, let's shift gears again. How to talk. You'll notice I titled this, How to Talk to a Legislator and Not at One. We all get frustrated with them. We do have to remember that most of them don't have any staff, any budget, or any time. So don't get frustrated. Be a resource all day long. That's your job, is to be a resource. So do your homework first. Who is their staff? What is their interest? I mean, sometimes you can find on LinkedIn or their Facebook page that, I don't know, they like skiing or dogs or something. It's wonderful to have some background of a legislator as a person before you go in there. So how is water skiing going, or whatever it is? You would not believe what a difference that makes, rather than just sitting down and immediately jumping into the topic. What committees are they on? What is their calendar? What does their resume say? Do your homework, not just on the legislator, but on the staff. It's critically important. The staff is also your friend. So don't be sad if you don't get a meeting with a legislator, but you get with the legislative aide. We all know that the legislative aides pretty much do all the work. They write the legislation, they field the phone calls, they do a lot of the meetings. So it is not a disappointment if that happens. And again, you're a resource. Bring paper, bring a copy of the report, bring a copy of the poll, bring a copy of anything related to what you're talking about, because again, they have no time, no staff, and no budget. Be a resource before you're the request. So this is where the paper comes in. You know, you throw a piece of paper at them and you say, look at the national testing of homeschoolers versus public schools, let's say. You know, this is one of the reasons that we want to do this particular policy change for homeschoolers, let's say. Before you're asking them for something, provide them with the reason that they should say yes, or alternatively say no if it's something that you're not supporting. Identify yourself fully when you call for an appointment. I am from this county. If you're calling a Republican, tell them what your registration is. If you're calling a Democrat, tell them what your registration is. They'll look you up. Guarantee you 100%. They probably have access to the Virginia voter rolls that none of the rest of us do. So sometimes that can really make a difference. And if you are a member of an organization, feel free to tell them you're not committing your organization to anything. You know, I work with a school choice group here in Henrico County or whatever it is. If you're not a constituent, okay, so let me back up. So sometimes you want to go see your legislator because that person is your legislator. So that makes perfect sense. However, you've done your homework and you realize that your legislator in your town is not on the committee that is looking at the education policy bill. So now it helps to see them because they'll be voting. But if you really want to get to somebody, you have to find somebody in the committee. So often you're not visiting a legislator that you are a constituent of. If that is the case, you can just go for it. But I always advise people to bring somebody who is a constituent with. So say you want to see someone who's in a Fairfax County, well, probably not, but in a Fairfax County position, and you're not in Fairfax County, see if you have a colleague or a friend who will go with you to meet with that person. Always make an appointment ahead of time with your legislator or staff. And again, when you're making the appointment, fully identify yourself. If they ask you if you're their, you know, you are their constituent and you're not, don't say that you are. And also tell them that you're bringing materials with you that you hope to share. That can really help. And, you know, the other thing we tell people in general is always go in pairs, not in threes, not in fours, not in eights, but go in pairs. It really helps. It's a psychological human-y thing to feel more comfortable and confident when there are two of you. You feel like you have a wingman. And it also, if there's any issues or problems, it's sometimes easier for, well, people on the other side of the desk often don't get as feisty as if there's two of you and they're irritated with you. And also it's a good way to break the ice a little bit with another person. So strongly recommend always go in pairs. Understand how the process works. It helps you be realistic in your approach. We all know what happened to the last ed choice bill in Virginia. It's very sad, really. But the thing is, with legislation, sometimes it takes 2 and 3 and 4 cycles to get it through. That is the process. It is not necessarily a failure. It's the process. And the more you work it with meetings, the more you work it in the media, the more you work it with your legislative team, the more you get toward the end goal, which is so again, don't be discouraged if it didn't pass this year. It's up again next year, and sometimes it really does take time. Don't bring your opinions, bring facts. Again, make sure everything you're telling them is fact-based. If you have anecdotes about kids and parents, that's wonderful. Always leave paper, again, peppered with red meat and resources. You guys know where to find all that stuff. Bring it with you. Write down your questions when you're going to be in the legislative office. Don't just think, and I mean, literally write them on a notepad and bring them with, because what happens is you start chatting and you start chasing rabbits. And the next thing you know, you're out the door, you're saying, oh, shoot, I forgot to ask them this question. I tell people, write down your questions in a Word doc, print one out for you and print one out for them, because a lot of times if they say, oh, gee, I don't know, you can hand them the piece of paper and say, well, you know what? I have the questions here. And I understand you don't know today, but here's the question on paper. I'll call you in a week and you can let me know what you found. So it's a very, very helpful tool. After you've identified the problem, offer suggestions, again, with backup resources information. When you're writing a letter to your legislator, short, concise, obvious ask, put the backup in there. If it's on a piece of paper, make sure you're attaching it. If you're doing it by email, put a hyperlink in there. One issue per letter, literally one issue. And for the love of Pete, don't ever let it go down past 2 pages. They're not going to read it. Make sure that when you put your subject line in there, whether it's for an email or for a piece of paper, and honestly, I would advise do both, send both, mail one, email the other one. Put something sassy in the subject line, something that'll really get their attention. Again, not rude, but something spicy and sharp. Here's the accepted version for all states for addressing your legislator. So that's kind of a simple thing there. All right, so rule number 1 and rule number 2 of legislative outreach. Rule number 1, I said it before, they have no staff, no time, and no budget. We get very irritated and mad at them, and then we forget that they don't have staff, time, or budget. That is why the most important thing you can do to get your foot in the door and to get your opinion heard is to be a resource. Number 2, again, because of rule number 1, that is where your greatest success will be, relationship and resource. And honestly, you don't want to waste their time. No legislator wants to waste their time and say, oh my gosh, a lady came in and all she talked about was her grandkids the whole time. It was such a waste of my time. But it's okay not to do the hard ask on the first round either. So just think about that. It's the human nature-y things. Legislators are people just like the rest of us. And they've got people yelling at them and asking them for stuff and demanding things all day long. Fellow legislators, the media, constituents, whatever. Try to be their friend. Establish that relationship. Find that commonality, whether it's walking a dog or whatever it is, and really exploit that in your relationship with them while you're asking them for something very specific. All right. So again, that's the end of that. This is again, the most important thing on here is the email. So with that, I am going to stop my share and I will get this into a PDF for all of you. So, question.
All right. Yeah, well, first of all, I want to thank you, Carrie, so much for your time and tremendous amount of wisdom. One of the things I do want to sort of reiterate some of the points you made on contacting your legislator. One of the things that I have found to be effective is if you're having a hard time getting to see the legislator, get to know their legislative aide.
Yep.
Don't be obvious you're trying to woo them or whatever, but just when you talk to them, be obviously very, very kind, thank them for trying, and try to learn as much about them as you can. You can go online a lot of the times, and you can learn about them a little bit, where they're from, so forth and so on. Over time, they will soften up and they will try to help you if you are trying to help them. That's one of the things that Carrie just talked about, is being a resource. A quick story in so VEOA is part of is a project of the Middle Resolution Policy Foundation. We also have a PAC, and we started that back in 2009, and that's all we did was got involved in elections. In 2012, we decided it was time to get involved in policy. The reason is we were discovering that the legislators we were helping get elected just were having a really hard time understanding policy, the bills they were reading and so forth. So we said, okay, we want to be a resource for them to help them. So we picked election integrity. Actually, was the first policy area we got involved with. It's how I met Nancy Smith. Many of you know Nancy. We got involved with getting photo ID passed for voting, and it was passed. Of course, it got repealed in 2019. So then we became experts in election integrity. Then we became experts in education. And that's how we started introducing education success accounts or education savings accounts. We first introduced that in 2015. So to Carrie's point, it takes time. I am convinced this is going to pass one day. A lot hinges on November 7th here in Virginia, obviously. But even if we don't get what we want on November 7th, we are in every kind of community you can imagine right now. The VEOA is. We're in marginalized communities. We're in the rural communities. We're working with pastors. We're working with all kinds of stakeholders, even with the NAACP, who unfortunately there are many in the NAACP who like this policy, but because they are very much I want to say controlled, but the NEA and the AFT are very connected to NAACP. And of course, they don't want to see any of this stuff pass. So the point is, this takes time. You have to have relationships. And that's really key. Always go in when you're meeting with your legislator, be kind, have resources, make sure they understand that you can be a resource for them over time. And that's you're going to get a lot further that way than going in and blasting them because they didn't vote the way you wanted them to. That is not going to be helpful at all. All right. So what I'd like to do is see if we have any questions. Put them in the chat if you would. And I've got a couple for you, Carrie. You ended with something I'm very familiar with, and you started with something I am not very familiar with, and that would be social media. And just for everybody on this call, the Virginia Education Opportunity Alliance just hired a pretty major social media firm to start doing social media for us. So yesterday I created, which I'd never done before, really that well, if I've done it, is I created a Facebook account for the VEOA, Instagram, and X or Twitter account. The other one they encouraged us to do was LinkedIn. Carrie, that's my question for you. Is LinkedIn a good place to go? Or is it, they said we should definitely be in LinkedIn. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on that.
Yes, especially on the policy side. We don't use LinkedIn as much because we're sort of more grassrootsy. We could, but we just haven't. But if you're doing policy stuff, it's a great place to be because again, people find you there. If they do a search, a Google or DuckDuckGo or whatever they use, VEOA, and you're on LinkedIn, it's because LinkedIn pays to be there. It's one of the first things that'll pop up. In fact, sometimes it'll pop up before your own organization pops up. And again, it's a great way to find people and to put comments. That people have blogs on LinkedIn. People will do the same thing they do on any other, use it as a social media rather than sort of a business community kind of thing. You can post, any research you've done. I'm on a radio show next Tuesday, tune in, all the same stuff. And yeah, people, I saw some numbers recently that the number of people who are using LinkedIn since COVID has 5x what people were doing before COVID. I don't know why that is, but we're all stuck in our houses for a while, I guess, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, I would advise that as well, for sure. It's not something I've done, but I do think it's a very good idea.
Excellent. Well, one of the questions that we got earlier was, what do you do when you have a difficult time? And I talked a little bit about developing a relationship with the legislative aid, but what are ways to get an appointment with your legislator or your representative? And I'll just start with the first, and we talked about this a little bit. It makes it a lot easier if you live in the district. So your point about if you don't live in the district, bring somebody that does and obviously is sympathetic to your cause. But what any other suggestions you have, Carrie?
Be very specific when you call and ask for an appointment. We did some stuff and we kind of tried this in Florida. It kind of came out of a conversation. So we were trying to get some legislative changes to some election integrity bills in Florida. And we were getting flustered. And I said to somebody, you know what, I want you to tell them. And I was kind of joking. I said, I want you to tell them you want to talk about line 573. And she's like, okay. So she calls up this legislator and says, I want to talk to you specifically about line 573, which says LMNOP on it. And she got the appointment and the guy was really interested. What in the world is she being so specific about? This has piqued my curiosity. So I thought that was interesting. We actually started using that and it worked a lot. So, I mean, I'm not saying every time you try to get an appointment, use line XYZ in the the voucher bill, but be very specific. Don't say, I want to come in and talk about parental choice. Come in and give some very specific example of what in that world you want to talk about, whether it's related to general policy, if you're talking to the executive branch, or if it's, a legislative issue. Just be whatever that thing is, just make it very specific. That really does seem to make a big difference. And again, saying, I have some materials I'd like to share with you. I with the legislator, with the staff, whoever it is, I really hope that you would find this helpful. And I'd like just about 10 minutes to explain this research to you, or to explain this polling to you, or this white paper to you. And then they say, ooh, materials. They're going to bring me stuff and I'll be smarter when I get out on the floor. So it's all about the egos and making them feel a little bit smarter. So again, specific, always be right and polite, always be friendly and nice, and make it really clear. Don't imply that you're trying to bring the material that they will find helpful. Be very specific about that's what you're doing.
Yeah, and another thing, we're going to start identifying people in different districts around Virginia that we have concerns with the legislators, and we're going to start talking to them about how to go about this, right? One of the things that we're going to encourage them to do is don't just start talking to them during session or just before session. Reach out
Yes.
to them in July, August, September, assuming it's not election season, which is in Virginia, it's every year, but get to know them. And I agree, definitely be specific when you say, hey, I would like to go visit with, legislator XYZ. Tell them why you want to go in, and it doesn't have to be about the issue you really want to talk to them about eventually. It could be about, something going on in the schools. It could be something going on in your community. And it needs to be a legitimate concern, and it needs to be something that they could address. A lot, legislators introduce a lot of legislation. There's 2,500 to 3,000 bills introduced every year in the General Assembly in Virginia. Many of those, if not most of those, come as a result of a recommendation or a request from a constituent. That's how legislators find out about issues. So if you go in and you just say, and you come up with an idea that you might have about a piece of legislation, say, hey, I have an idea about, family leave, or I have an idea about this. I would really like to explore it with you. And then develop that relationship with them so that they know the next time you call, or after the second visit, they know who you are, they know they can trust you, and you have developed a relationship with them. Again, going back to the R word, relationship. It's all about relationships.
It is. And I'll say too, I am a big proponent of people going into the local district office. When you either call or go to the local office, you make them very nervous, which is a good thing. So just very quick story, many years ago, I worked for a trade association in Arizona, and this was down in the fax days. And we were working on this one legislative issue. And I stood in my partner's office and I faxed 15 letters to one legislator who was the key voter on this one piece of legislation. It was actually about bugs. It was a Terminator thing. But anyway, so 15 letters went in, and I said, no, we're not sending them to the Capitol. We're sending them into his district office. And it was 15 different people in the trade association. So about 2 weeks later, my colleague and I went to visit with him, and he leans over his desk and he says to me, Carrie, I got like 65 letters. And I'm thinking, you got 15. I know exactly how many you got because I'm the one that mailed them, faxed them to you. He literally thought he got like 50 or 60 letters. So there's something magical about the local office. And, as far as the relationship goes, that's, if you can, that is definitely the place to start. Everybody's a little bit more loosey-goosey and friendly there. It's not so high stress. So just pop your head in and, drop stuff off, or, whatever it is. But those appointments not during legislative season in district offices are critically important.
Yeah. And if you're, as I mentioned, we're going to be trying to identify people in certain districts around the state of legislators that, we need to work on as far as voting for more education choice. If you're interested in being one of those people, please contact me at Craig@veoa.org. Lindsay, could you put that in the chat? And Lindsay, is there anybody got their hand up? I can't really see everybody, so I can't tell. Can you see?
I don't see any hands up yet, but there was one question in the chat during the presentation that says, how do you find, and this is related to social media, how do you find the names of groups you want to tag or at?
That is a great question. All right, so you're the VEOA. Maybe there's some other education association group in your universe, or a legislator that's your friend. Go to their Twitter feed. At the top of every Twitter feed, it'll say followers and following. That's where you find people. You can also just search both in Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter. There's a little search bar, and you can put Virginia education, for example, and all kinds of little thingies will pop up. Some of them are your friends, some of them are not your friends, but you need to know who everybody is. And sooner or later, if somebody has retweeted your tweet, you have to look, there's a little section called notifications. It's really obvious, you cannot miss it. And I always click over there and see who's retweeted our stuff. And invariably, I find 2 or 3 more people to put in our list of followers because they're now following us. So just like the legislative process, it's definitely a process. You don't find all your friends in the first day, but you can start with Middle Resolution. You can start with Virginia Public Policy Institute. I mean, there's all kinds of Virginia that we have a great Twitter presence. VIPP does. And then if you include us in it, people in our universe will see your stuff. And go to the Virginia Institute Twitter feed and see who we follow and who's following us. And all the conservative groups in Virginia, whether it's AFP or Heritage Action or whoever we got, you can find people on their list. It just takes a little time to read through who everybody is, but you'll know right away if those are people you want to include in your atting in your universe. Hopefully Sonia, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, so it doesn't appear there's any more questions. So I want to just say, first of all, that we are going to have this video on our website. We got a number of requests. We always do, people who can't join us this particular time. So we put those videos under, this one will be under trainings, the trainings tab. So you can go there. So if there's stuff that, as Carrie said, she speaks very fast and she went through the presentation quickly, but she covered a lot of great ground. So you can go back then and you can go back into the presentation and you can say, oh, what did she say about, the @ sign, or because that's still stuff that confuses me. Hopefully, this group that we brought on board to do our social media, they're going to be able to help me out there. Well, they will be able to, if I have the brain for it, we'll see. But anyway, this has been a great presentation, and I want to thank everybody for joining us. And feel free, as I said, to contact me if you're interested in becoming part of a group of people that work with their legislator, develop relationships. We will provide you with the resources and the training to do that, and we're really eager to do that in many of the districts around Virginia. It just doesn't have to be. We have some targeted districts. There's obviously legislators that are very supportive of what we're doing, and then there's some that are not super supportive. And they're both important to contact, because the ones that aren't, or that are very supportive but have friends on the school board or have friends that are in the schools, they're going to get heat, and they need to know that they're being supported. So we need to be able to reach all of those people. So again, thank you so much, Carrie. Have you got any last parting words you'd like to share?
No, just the best way to get something done is to start. A lot of people,
That's right.
it's kind of obvious, right? But a lot of people are nervous about social media, or nervous about writing letters, or nervous about visits. Honestly, it's like anything else you can think of in your life that you're really approach with trepidation. And then once you started doing it, you're like, phew, that wasn't so bad. It's the same thing. It's all about the starting. Find a buddy, find somebody to help you along with it, but just go for it. And please, if you do create a Twitter account, make sure you include the Virginia Institute for Public Policy in your list. Come follow us. And again, you've all got my email. I put the PDF in the chat, so Craig will have it as well. If there's anything I can ever do for you, I'd be absolutely delighted. So feel free to ask.
Thank you so much, Carrie. And thank you everybody for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks. Good night, everybody.
Good night.